Have you ever wondered why one person can take over your mind so completely that no matter what you do, you can't escape their presence in your thoughts? You try to focus on your goals, your work, your growth, yet they keep appearing like a shadow that refuses to fade. It feels like your heart and mind are at war, one begging you to let go, the other holding on like your life depends on it. That feeling isn't weakness. It's a signal, a deep, powerful indicator of something much greater happening inside you. When someone becomes impossible to forget, it means your emotions have attached meaning to them, not just attraction, but significance. They've triggered something you crave: connection, validation, excitement, maybe even a sense of purpose. You're not addicted to them. You're addicted to the version of yourself you experienced when they were around. That's why it hurts. You're chasing a feeling, not a person. And the truth is, that feeling came from within you all along. You see, the mind clings to what feels unfinished. It replays the past not because it loves pain, but because it fears incompleteness. The more you resist those thoughts, the more power they gain. The more you try to forget, the deeper they dig in. But what if obsession isn't a curse? What if it's a call? A message from your subconscious telling you that it's time to grow, to evolve, to reclaim what you gave away too easily. The reason you can't get her out of your mind isn't because she's extraordinary. It's because you made her the center of your emotional world. You projected your value onto her, your dreams onto her, your validation onto her. When she left or pulled away, it felt like you lost all of that too, but that's the illusion. Nothing you gave was ever truly hers. It was always yours, your energy, your attention, your passion. She only reflected it back to you. And now that mirror is gone, and you're being asked to see yourself directly without anyone else defining your worth. This is the moment that breaks most men, but it can also be the moment that builds you. Because when you stop trying to forget her and start asking what this experience is trying to teach you, you rise above obsession. You begin to realize that pain is just the price of transformation. Every great man has faced this same emotional storm, the feeling of losing control, of being consumed by someone else's absence. But the ones who evolve use it as fuel. They stop seeing it as heartbreak and start seeing it as rebirth. So stay with me until the end, because this isn't just about forgetting someone, it's about remembering yourself. It's about reclaiming the power you once handed over to another person and realizing it never truly left you. By the end of this journey, you'll understand how to turn emotional chaos into inner clarity, how to stop chasing ghosts and start attracting peace, confidence, and purpose. You were never meant to be enslaved by your emotions. You were meant to master them. And the very fact that you're struggling to let go right now is proof that you're capable of deeper love, stronger focus, and unshakable growth. You're not broken, you're awakening. And this awakening begins with understanding what your mind is really trying to tell you when it can't stop thinking about her. When your mind keeps circling back to her, it's not love that keeps you trapped, it's attachment. Attachment is the silent chain that binds your emotions to a moment that no longer exists. It disguises itself as passion, as connection, as something sacred. But at its core, it's fear, the fear of loss, of emptiness, of not being enough without her. That's why your thoughts won't let go. They're trying to protect you from confronting the space she left behind. But that space isn't meant to be feared. It's meant to be filled by you. Every time your mind drifts to her, it's actually showing you where you've abandoned yourself. That constant replay of memories, the imaginary conversations, the endless what-ifs, they all point toward parts of you that still need healing. You don't miss her as much as you miss the version of yourself who felt alive when she was there. And that's the truth most people run from. They try to move on by distraction, by pretending, by forcing themselves to forget. But the only real way forward is to face what her absence exposed. The person who occupies your thoughts is a reflection of your deepest emotional pattern. Maybe she made you feel seen, wanted, or worthy in ways you hadn't felt before. Maybe she gave you a glimpse of connection that awakened something you didn't know you were missing. That's why letting go feels impossible, because your mind has linked her presence with your identity. But she was never your identity. She was a mirror showing you what already existed within you, the power, the confidence, the tenderness, the passion. They weren't hers to give or take. They were always yours to own. The mind is clever. It tricks you into believing that healing means erasing her from your memory. But healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means transforming the energy you once gave her into strength. Every time you catch yourself thinking about her, you have a choice. You can fall into the same loop of longing, or you can use that moment as fuel to rebuild yourself. Instead of asking why she left, ask what this pain is trying to awaken in you. Instead of chasing closure from someone else, create closure through self-awareness. The reason this hurts so deeply is because your soul is calling you to evolve. Pain is not punishment. It's a signal. It's life pushing you to outgrow the patterns that once kept you small. That's why it burns. That's why it consumes your peace. Growth always demands discomfort. The heart doesn't break to destroy you. It breaks to expand your capacity to love, to feel, to live with more truth. You're not being punished for caring too much. You're being prepared to love yourself the way you wanted her to love you. So when the thoughts come, don't resist them. Observe them. See them for what they are. Echoes of attachment, not reflections of reality. Every time you catch yourself drifting back to her, remind yourself, this is my chance to come home to me. This is my moment to take back my energy. You're not losing someone. You're rediscovering yourself. And as you begin to pour that same intensity, that same passion, that same emotional fire into your own growth, something incredible happens. You stop craving her presence because you become everything you were seeking in her. You stop chasing love because you finally embody it. And that is the moment your healing turns into power. The moment you stop chasing what left and start nurturing what remains within you, something begins to shift. The energy that once spiraled outward, desperate for her attention, starts turning inward, feeding your own strength. That's when you begin to realize how much power you actually hold. You start seeing that it was never her attention that made you feel alive. It was your own openness, your own willingness to feel deeply, your own capacity to care. You were always the source. She was only the spark that revealed what was already burning inside you. But most people never reach this understanding because they stay trapped in emotional dependency. They wait for closure, for validation, for some moment that will finally set them free. Yet closure doesn't come from someone else's words. It comes from the courage to accept reality as it is. The truth is she's gone. And what you're missing now isn't her, it's certainty. The mind hates uncertainty. It wants answers, reasons, patterns it can understand. But growth happens in uncertainty. Power is born in acceptance. When you can look at the emptiness and say, this is where I rebuild, that's when you begin to rise. Healing doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop letting your feelings control you. You stop letting memories define your value. You stop letting absence dictate your worth. Every thought that used to weaken you becomes a test of your emotional strength. Every wave of longing becomes a reminder of how capable you are of deep love. But this time, that love must be directed inward, because no one else can give you peace. No one else can carry you through your pain. Only you can decide to stop reliving the same wound and start rewriting the meaning of it. There's a sacred power in pain when you stop resisting it. When you allow yourself to feel it fully, to breathe through it, to sit with it without judgment, it begins to lose control over you. It no longer defines your identity, it refines your awareness. It forces you to look at the parts of yourself that you've neglected for too long, the parts that craved approval, the parts that feared being forgotten, the parts that believed you needed someone else to complete you. That's where transformation begins, not when you numb the pain, but when you understand it. The truth is the person you can't stop thinking about has already served their purpose in your life. They were the lesson, not the destination. They came to show you something about yourself that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. And now that lesson is complete. Holding on any longer doesn't bring them back. It only keeps you anchored to the past. When you accept that, a quiet strength begins to emerge. You stop looking back for what's gone, and you start looking inward for what's eternal. That's when you start to feel something different, peace. Not the kind that comes from forgetting, but the kind that comes from understanding. Realize you no longer need them to feel whole. You no longer need their presence to feel powerful. Because you finally see that the love, the passion, the energy you thought you lost was never tied to them. It was always a reflection of you. And when you reclaim that reflection, you become unstoppable. You stop being haunted by the past because you finally stepped into your own light. When you finally stop chasing what has already ended, the world around you begins to quiet. The noise of longing, the chaos of overthinking, the constant tug of memories, all of it starts to lose its grip. In that silence, you meet the person you've ignored the most, yourself. You start to see the version of you that has survived every disappointment, every heartbreak, every sleepless night. The version that kept going even when everything inside wanted to give up. That is not weakness. That is resilience disguised as pain. You've spent so much time trying to understand her, but how much time have you spent trying to understand yourself? Every emotion you felt, every ache in your chest, every restless thought, it's all communication. It's your soul trying to tell you that something within you is ready to evolve. The obsession, the sadness, the emptiness, they are not signs of failure. They are signs of awakening. You're being pushed to confront the parts of you that relied on external love to feel worthy. You're being called to replace dependency with strength, attachment with self-respect, and longing with clarity. The truth is, healing is not about forgetting her face. It's about remembering your own value. It's about realizing that your worth doesn't rise and fall with someone's presence. You are not valuable because someone saw something special in you. You are valuable because that something special has always existed, even when no one else noticed. You don't need validation to shine. You don't need permission to move forward. The pain you feel right now isn't evidence that you're broken. It's proof that you're still alive, still capable of deep emotion, still able to grow through the fire instead of being consumed by it. There comes a point when you stop asking why things happened and start asking what they're trying to teach you. Every heartbreak, every disappointment, every rejection carries a lesson hidden inside it. The lesson here isn't about losing someone. It's about finding the strength to love without losing yourself. It's about learning to give without becoming empty, to care without surrendering your power, to connect without forgetting your individuality. That is emotional mastery. That is maturity. That is what turns pain into transformation. The thoughts of her will still come, but they won't control you anymore. They'll visit like passing clouds, but you'll stand firm, grounded in your own worth. You'll realize that peace doesn't come when the thoughts disappear. It comes when they no longer shake you. You'll begin to see that what once felt like loss was actually redirection. The universe wasn't taking something from you. It was making room for something better, something deeper, something aligned with who you're becoming. You are not meant to chase what's gone. You're meant to grow into what's next. And what's next is a stronger, wiser, calmer version of you. The kind of person who no longer begs for love because they've learned to generate it from within. The kind of person who no longer fears solitude because they've turned it into power. You'll stop looking for peace in her absence because you'll have found it in your presence. That's the transformation this pain was always leading you toward. To finally realize that everything you thought she gave you was simply a reflection of the greatness that has always lived inside you. There's a moment in every healing journey when you realize that freedom isn't about forgetting. It's about no longer needing to remember. The thoughts that once pierced through your peace begin to fade, not because you force them away, but because they no longer serve a purpose. You've extracted the lesson, absorbed the truth, outgrown the version of yourself that once depended on someone else to feel whole. That's the quiet victory most people never reach, the point where you don't need closure, revenge, or reassurance. You simply understand, and that understanding becomes your liberation. Your mind may still wander to her from time to time, but now it does so without pain. That's when you'll know the wound has healed. You'll be able to look back, not with bitterness, but with clarity. You'll see how every sleepless night was shaping your endurance, how every unanswered message was building your detachment, how every wave of longing was strengthening your emotional discipline. What once felt like punishment was actually preparation. The version of you emerging from this process is sharper, calmer, more grounded. You've learned to feel deeply without drowning. You've learned that peace isn't found in getting what you want. It's found in learning to stay centered when you don't. The human heart is resilient beyond comprehension. It breaks to expand, not to collapse. Every tear you've shed carried away a piece of the illusion that your happiness depended on someone else. Every moment of pain was cleansing you of false attachments, pushing you toward a deeper truth, that love begins where need ends. When you no longer seek someone to fill your emptiness, you begin to attract connections built on strength, not survival. That's the kind of love that lasts because it's rooted in wholeness, not in fear. You're beginning to see that the energy you once gave away so easily is sacred. Your attention, your time, your emotions, they are currency. And you get to choose how to spend them. You no longer invest them in people who don't value your presence. You no longer chase validation because you've learned that real power lies in self-approval. You no longer beg for love because you become the source of it. That shift in perspective changes everything. It transforms desperation into dignity, longing into purpose, and heartbreak into wisdom. You start walking differently, not with arrogance, but with quiet confidence, the kind that comes from knowing who you are and what you deserve. You stop trying to prove your worth because your actions, your peace, and your consistency speak louder than any words. That's the kind of energy people feel even when you say nothing. It's magnetic. It draws respect without effort and attention without pursuit. The same energy that once made you obsess over her now becomes the force that elevates your life. Every emotion you've experienced was necessary. Every ache had meaning. It stripped away your illusions, forced you to rebuild your foundation, and guided you towards self-mastery. You're no longer defined by who left or who stayed. You're defined by how you chose to rise. That is real strength. Not the absence of pain, but the ability to turn pain into purpose. When you understand that, you stop seeing heartbreak as the end of something and start seeing it as the beginning of someone new, someone wiser, stronger, and finally in control of his own heart. As you rise into this new state of awareness, you begin to notice how differently the world responds to you. The same energy that once spiraled outward in confusion now radiates with direction. You no longer chase connection, you attract it. You no longer beg for attention, you command it effortlessly through presence alone. The quiet strength that comes from healing cannot be faked. It's an energy that others feel before you speak. You carry yourself with the calmness of someone who no longer seeks approval because you finally approved of yourself, and that shift changes everything about the way life unfolds. You begin to understand that your value was never supposed to be proven. It was supposed to be realized. You were never meant to earn love through sacrifice or chase acceptance through effort. The kind of peace you've discovered cannot come from validation. It can only come from alignment. You're aligned now, not with someone else's idea of love, but with your own truth. You understand that being alone is not emptiness, it's expansion. It's space for growth, clarity, and power. The solitude that once terrified you has become your sanctuary. It's where you rebuild, recalibrate, and reconnect with your deeper sense of purpose. Every thought of her that once weakened you now reminds you of how far you've come. What used to trigger longing now triggers gratitude. You start to see that the person who once consumed your mind was simply a catalyst for your evolution. She awakened parts of you that needed attention, and once that purpose was fulfilled, her role in your story naturally ended. There's no bitterness in that. Only understanding, because when you finally grasp that people are experiences, not possessions, you free yourself from emotional imprisonment. You stop clinging to what's gone and start appreciating what it taught you. You've learned that emotional control doesn't mean suppression. It means choice. It means feeling everything deeply, but acting from a place of awareness, not reaction. It means you can experience attraction, desire, even love, without losing yourself in the process. That is mastery. That is the balance between heart and mind that most never achieve. You've learned to give love freely, but never at the expense of your peace. To open your heart, but never hand away your power. To care deeply, but never lose clarity. This is what it means to evolve, to reach the point where you no longer seek to escape pain, but instead use it as a map back to yourself. You're not afraid to feel anymore because you've realized feelings are not the enemy. They're the doorway to truth. You no longer run from discomfort because you understand that growth hides inside it. You've stopped waiting for someone to complete you because you've realized you were never incomplete. Now you walk through life with a sense of inner stability that no one can take away. You don't need constant reassurance because you trust your own strength. You don't chase fleeting moments of validation because your self-respect has become your anchor. You've outgrown the need to be chosen because you've chosen yourself. And that choice, the choice to stand firm in your worth, to no longer give power to what left, to build peace from within, that's what transforms a broken heart into an unshakable soul. When you reach the point where peace becomes your default state, you begin to understand how rare that truly is. Most people live in constant reaction, chasing highs, escaping lows, clinging to whoever can distract them from their own reflection. But you've outgrown that cycle. You've learned that peace isn't something you stumble into, it's something you build. It's the result of discipline, awareness, and the willingness to face your truth without flinching. The version of you that once begged for attention now commands respect simply by existing. You've stopped fighting for love because you've realized that what's meant for you doesn't require struggle. It flows naturally toward those who are grounded enough to receive it. You start to see that the battle was never about her. It was always about you versus your old self. The one who sought validation through others, who confused attachment with love, who mistook chaos for passion. That version of you had to die for this one to live. And that's the real transformation. Not forgetting the past, but shedding the illusions that kept you tied to it. Every moment of pain was carving out space for a stronger foundation. Every tear was washing away a weaker identity. Every setback was redirecting you toward your truth. You didn't lose her. You lost the version of yourself that needed her to feel complete. The mind that once obsessed over being chosen now finds fulfillment in choosing itself every single day. You no longer need someone to see your worth for it to exist. You see it in your focus, in your discipline, in the way you carry yourself. You feel it in your quiet confidence, in your unshakable presence. That's what real power looks like. Not arrogance, but self-certainty. The understanding that you don't need to chase what you attract naturally when you stand in your authenticity. And the more you embrace that, the more magnetic you become. Not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you've mastered the art of being complete. The world starts responding differently to you. Opportunities open. People are drawn to your calmness, to the depth in your energy. You no longer seek to prove anything, and that very absence of need makes everything flow toward you effortlessly. That's what happens when you stop operating from lack and start operating from abundance. You no longer say, I hope they notice me. You say, I know who I am, and the right ones will recognize it. That mindset doesn't just change relationships, it changes your entire life. You begin to understand that the mind that was once consumed by thoughts of her was never your enemy. It was your teacher. It forced you to evolve, to confront your insecurities, to rise above emotional dependency. It taught you patience, resilience, and self-control. It made you look inward, where the real work happens. And because of that, you are now emotionally invincible. You've learned that the most powerful thing a man can do is not to chase love, but to embody it. To become so grounded, so whole, that anyone who enters your life must rise to meet your energy or drift away naturally. Now, your thoughts no longer revolve around what you've lost, but around what you're building. Your focus shifts from who hurt you to who you're becoming. You stop replaying old memories and start designing your future. You understand that letting go isn't about losing. It's about making room for peace, purpose, and power. You finally grasp that the hardest person to move on from is not her, but the version of yourself that forgot how powerful you truly are. And now that you've remembered, nothing can pull you back into the chaos you've already outgrown. There comes a point when you stop seeking to prove your worth to the world and simply live it. You begin to move with a quiet certainty that no one else's validation can give you. The same silence that once felt heavy now feels sacred. It's no longer a reminder of what's missing. It's proof of what you've gained. You've discovered that true strength doesn't roar. It whispers through the calm of a mind that's no longer at war with itself. You've learned to stand in that stillness without fear because you know now that peace isn't the absence of emotion. It's the mastery of it. When you no longer allow someone to live rent-free in your mind, you create space for power to move in. Your thoughts become focused, your energy concentrated, your purpose clear. You stop scattering yourself in 1,000 directions trying to fill the void because you finally understand the void was never empty. It was waiting for you, waiting for your focus, your discipline, your truth. The same energy you once poured into missing someone is now fueling your transformation. You've redirected longing into creation, heartbreak into hunger, pain into purpose. That shift isn't small. It's monumental. It's the turning point between who you were and who you are becoming. The obsession that once consumed you was never really about love. It was about your mind craving a sense of completion. It attached that feeling to a person because that's what it was taught to do. But now you see through that illusion. Completion was never outside of you. It was buried under the noise of your own expectations. You've peeled back those layers and found something real, yourself. That realization changes everything. You no longer ask, why didn't they love me enough? Instead, you ask, why didn't I love myself completely? And with that awareness comes freedom. Because the moment you start loving yourself without condition, you stop accepting half love from others. Every lesson you've learned through this journey has rewired your understanding of connection. You no longer chase intensity that burns you. You seek energy that grounds you. You no longer confuse attention with affection. You recognize that real connection flows from respect, not desperation. You no longer tolerate emotional inconsistency because you've learned that peace is priceless. You've raised your standards, not out of pride, but out of clarity. You've realized that protecting your peace is not selfish, it's sacred. The heart that was once desperate for love has matured into one that understands its value. Now you move differently. You think deeper, speak less, and act with purpose. You've become someone who doesn't need to be understood because you finally understand yourself. That kind of power doesn't need to shout. It radiates quietly through your presence. People feel it when you walk into a room, not because you demand attention, but because you embody alignment. You no longer seek to impress. You express authenticity, and that alone makes you magnetic. What once felt like the end was really your beginning. Losing her didn't destroy you. It stripped away the illusions that were hiding your strength. You faced the deepest parts of your heart and come out on the other side unshaken. You've learned that no person, no rejection, no heartbreak can define you because your value doesn't depend on being chosen. You are not the sum of who stayed or who left. You are the sum of how fiercely you chose to rise, how bravely you chose to heal, and how deeply you chose to love yourself when the world went silent.